If you will, open your Bibles to the book of Nahum, chapter 3. Nahum, chapter 3, and I'll join you there as we continue our study of this fifth book, the Minor Prophets, in our journey so far. Now, as a crash course reminder, I know we have some that are here with us tonight who have not been a part of this study. You're picking up the tail end, the last chapter of this book. I'll read you in briefly as also a bit of a refresher for the rest of our audience this evening. So, Nahum is prophesying somewhere in that range from 662 BC to maybe as late as 616 BC, depending upon who you're reading from. Nahum is preaching or prophesying in Jerusalem of Judah to God's chosen people, and he's preaching about the kingdom of Assyria, referenced and represented by their capital city of Nineveh. This is the same Nineveh that was preached to by the prophet Jonah 100 years or so prior. In that instance, they did repent, but it was short-lived. Part of what we looked at last week was the short-lived nature of the revival under Noah's preaching, because ultimately they did come and destroy the kingdom of Israel, the northern 10 tribes. They expatriated those individuals into the kingdom of Assyria, never to be a people again. That was the strategy of the Assyrians, was to take the people out of their land and mix them in with people of other nations so that their national identity, their national heritage would be crippled and destroyed. They were a very vicious people. Because of their lack of faithfulness or lack of honoring God, because of their viciousness and cruelty, God is bringing judgment upon the Assyrian kingdom. Nahum's message is not like many of the other prophets, where he's preaching to the Assyrians, repent, be spared. He is preaching to the southern kingdom of Judah, don't be scared. God is going to protect you. It looks impossible. Everyone around you has fallen. Much more powerful nations than you have fallen. But God is not going to let you fail. His judgment is going to be poured out upon your enemies. As you'll recall in our conversation or our study last time around, we looked at how this should not have been too divorced of a concept for the southern kingdom of Judah, because it had happened 60 years or so prior that Sennacherib, or Sennacherib, however you want to go about it, Sennacherib, get the Polly in there so she's never here, Sennacherib. Anyway, get that king of Assyria, who had been their great warrior king, had sieged the city and had spoken harsh things through his emissaries to the people in the city of pending doom and destruction. But God, through the prophet Isaiah, had encouraged King Hezekiah that they would be destroyed without ever setting foot in the city or launching a formal attack. And God had already proved his power to deliver them by causing the angel of the Lord to go out in the camp of the Assyrian army and slaying many of them, to the extent that they had to return home. And ultimately, Sennacherib never came back into the land of Judah or the outside of Jerusalem again. He was killed by his own sons in their temple. They were a polytheistic culture, and they worshipped a lot of false gods. Because of this and many other sins, God's judgment falls upon them. We left it off at the end of chapter 2, where God has been foretelling through Nahum the way that Nineveh is going to be destroyed. And it's going to be similar to the means that they have used to sack and destroy other cities. There will be siege warfare. The river of the Tigris that they're expecting to be their main defense ultimately will rise with rainwaters and help to weaken their defenses, taking down part of the walls. It speaks here of chariots being burned within the city, and just an awful scene. When we come into chapter 3, it's more of this declaration of the judgment of God against the city of Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Join me, let's go through the first 7 verses as a starter. Nahum's prophecy: woe to the bloody city, it is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. The noise of a whip, the noise of the rattling of the wheels, and of the prancing horses, and the jumping chariots. The horseman lifteth up both the bright sword and the glittering spear. There's a multitude of slain, a great number of carcasses. There's none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts. I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. And I will cast abominable filth upon thee, and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock. It shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforters for thee? The kings of Assyria, as already indicated, were well acquainted with the advantage that psychological warfare could give them over their enemies. They employed psychological warfare to besiege cities, to cause the people within to grow weary, to quit, to consider defection and betrayal. Many records have survived that tell us of their frightening form of intimidation to subdue their opponents. Now some of that is being reversed upon them by Almighty God. The last great king of Assyria is Ashurbanipal. Put up a nice picture of him, as you can see him back there. This is not really him. This is a statue of him. He wasn't really a silver dude, just in case anybody was wondering. But he wrote about his campaign against Taharka of Egypt. And if we talk about Taharka of Egypt, this, is that the one I want to use? No, I'm going to use this one here, the Taharka of Egypt. Okay, so anyway, this is his writings. The people who revolted, I captured. Great and small, I cut down with the sword. Their corpses I hung on stakes. I tore off their skins and covered the wall of the city with them. Naturally, anyone reading this description would think twice about rebelling against him. This is on many of the Assyrian wall panels that have been found through archaeological study. Describing this terrifying practice, Walter Meyer wrote, quote, the atrocious practice of cutting off hands and feet, ears and noses, gouging out eyes, looping of heads, and then binding them to the vines or heaping them up before city gates. The utter fiendishness by which captives could be impaled or flayed alive through a process in which their skin was gradually yet completely removed. This planned frightfulness systematically enforced by the bloody city, which was now to be avenged. These are atrocities. These are crimes of war. But there was no one to stop them, no one to stand up against them. Mighty Egypt had fallen. And it was a sign to these bloody, wicked, violent Assyrian people to destroy not just the civilizations, but to enact atrocious cruelties on people, because they wanted to communicate just how much stronger, how much more powerful they were. The name of the bloody city was laid onto them, and Almighty God is declaring here that there is a woe, a punishment to the bloody city. No one's going to get out of this. In verses 2 and 3, there's a description of this assault on the city of Nineveh. It would have been a terrifying experience to be a city under siege. To be one of the citizens who lived inside of that city under siege would have been something of great fear. But how much more to be in that besieged city and see the enemy break through. As bad as it would have been to get up and see the enemy on the outside, to see them making their way through the walls, it would have been sobering. It would have been a very bleak moment for all those who witnessed, especially knowing how unmerciful they had been toward others. There was not going to be an easy and slow, it's not going to be a quick and easy death for these individuals. This was going to be a slow and painful destruction. This was revenge. And it was one that they had heaped upon themselves. These people that were breaking through their walls were intent on delivering pain and almost certain death. This description that we see in verses 2 and 3 is one that would strike fear into their hearts. This is a lot of death. This is a lot of destruction. This is a lot of suffering. Raymond Brown notes about the whole of Nahum, the whole book, quote, the word of the prophet here seems harsh and pitiless. But one must remember the agony caused throughout the Near Eastern world by the Assyrian invaders. They have been described as the most brutal empire which has ever suffered to roll its forces across the world. The book is about the utter justice of God, and as such it has an essential place in the Bible. Men must be reminded not only of the goodness, but also the severity of God. In fact, if you were to go take a look at the image and where I was finding some depictions, obviously they didn't have cameras and film crews on the siege of the city. But these depictions, some of these things that I've shared with you have come from a group that's known at, what was it called? It's a website, Most Horrible Kingdoms or Most Brutal Kingdoms in History. That's where they still rank. This was a brutal, bloodthirsty people that loved to enact tortures and punishment on other individuals as a sign of their power. God's judgment here sounds harsh if you're looking in verses 2 and 3, but it is the just side of God. It is easy for us to often stand and preach about the goodness and the love and the grace and mercy of God. Our God is the most merciful person in the existence of eternity. No human has ever been as merciful as God. No human has ever been as gracious as God. Even the most meek and patient among us have never been on the level of the meekness, patience, and long-sufferingness of God. But when God finds himself at the place of having to be just, you do not want to fall on the wrong side of his justice. There are people who find that out as they enter into their eternity. These individuals entered into their eternity as part of the justice of God. God is avenging those who have been wronged by the kingdom of Assyria. All can understand God's reasoning for bringing an end to Nineveh. It's for justice not only to be done, but also to be seen and done. Almighty God never has to explain himself, but graciously, so that no one can accuse him of being a vindictive God, he states why it is that Nineveh will be humbled. In verse 4, the language employed here leaves no doubt as to why it was that God acted in the way he did. What do we see here in verse 4? Witchcraft, necromancy, black arts. These things were prevalent among the people of the Assyrian kingdom, and particularly in Nineveh. The spirit world is unfamiliar territory for earthbound human beings such as you and I. We live and walk and move and breathe in the things that we can see, largely ignorant to the fact that there is spiritual warfare going on around us at all times. If you could see the demonic activity that was taking place around you every moment of every day, you would live in sheer terror. But it's real. It's there. We don't cross over into that spiritual realm. We don't live and move and have our being there. We don't function in that space. It is too complex, too overwhelming for where you and I exist and function as human beings. Praise God that he spares us so often from knowing about the spiritual combat that is going on around us. Yet there are people who in their prideful arrogance and sinful ignorance try to access the spirit world. And to do so, they're going through means outside of God because he's not granting that. God knows that it's dangerous for us to play in the realm of the spirit world while we are existing in the physical human world. God knows what is good and right. He warns against people who meddle in those things, that they are taking a risk and they are rebelling against him. Nineveh's people followed their leaders. King Esarhaddon especially was noted as a superstitious and almost neurotic man. He always had soothsayers and these false priests and magicians around him. So God judges Nineveh severely. What happened to these people is a warning to all who go against him and his word. They were dabbling in and inviting spiritual influences from wicked places. And God stood up against that for the righteous. He put an end to it. It's desperately sad when someone is left all alone in the world. It's probably the reason why many don't have the burden to go to hospital and nursing home visitation, because inevitably you're going to find somebody there who has either outlasted their family and friends or has been forgotten by family and friends. And it's sad. If you do Christian ministry for any length of time, you find someone like that who longs for any kind of personal companionship, care, tenderness, love. That's heartbreaking. If you have anyone who cares about you, who loves you, you praise God and thank God for that. That's the picture of what is presented as the fate of this great city and its inhabitants. Total embarrassment was going to be their lot. What we see described in verses 5 and 6 is God is going to expose their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses, and they're going to be ashamed and embarrassed in front of the entire world. Why? Total embarrassment seems to make sense, since they had made a kingdom out of humiliating and dehumanizing others. As judgment falls, they learn what it's like to be those who are devoid of compassion. Ashurbanipal, the last great king of Assyria that we spoke about just a moment ago, he speaks about how he captured Uite. Most believe Uite to be one of the Egyptian leaders. It's debatable as to which place. Let me read a little excerpt from what Ashurbanipal wrote about how he treated this opposing leader. I pierced his chin with my keen hand dagger. Through his jaw I passed a rope, put a dog chain upon him, and made him occupy a kennel on the east gate of the wall of Nineveh, which is named Entrance of the Thronging Nations. To the glory of Ashur, Ishtar, and the great gods, I took pity upon him and spared his life. He took it as a sign of pity and grace and mercy that this opposing dignitary, this man of royalty, his life was spared, but he spent the rest of his life in a kennel on the wall with a dog chain around his neck and a rope through his jawbone. I would say that Ashurbanipal's take of mercy is different than what we would consider merciful. That's degradation. It's humiliation. That's sending a message. God was against this city because of their wickedness and their lack of mercy. None would be shown to them. There was nobody who was going to come to their rescue. There was nobody that was going to be sad about their destruction. They were alone. There would be peoples who rejoiced at their downfall, but no one was going to be coming to their rescue. No one was sad. Let's go to verses 8 and 9 here. Art thou better than populous No? No, the Egyptian city we would more typically associate with Thebes or Thebes, whichever way you go about the pronunciation. That was situate among the rivers. It had the waters around about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was from the sea. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Put and Lubim were thy helpers. Bible teaches us, if nothing else, that we have a God who communicates with people. He's described as the speaking God, and he takes the initiative here to ask the inhabitants of Nineveh a question. And it's not a rhetorical. It's asking them a question that requires an answer. The Assyrians thought themselves better than other people. So God asks the question, do you think you're any better than these people? He wants them to think about an event from their recent history. The city that's spoken of here, that's the city. So this is the city as we're uncovering it now. Could you imagine what the city would have looked like in its former glory? If that's one of the walls and gates from approximately 2,600 years ago, 2,700 years ago. God's asking, Nineveh, are you better than them? This city was a fabulous place with a long and rich past. You can still visit there and walk the sun-scorched streets and pass along those sphinx-lined processional walkways that were so prevalent in Egyptian culture. The nation was united and strong in the New Kingdom era, and when that was the case, the Pharaoh would receive their crown in the temple of Karnak here in Thebes, the largest known place of worship in the ancient world. So this place that death, defeat, and humiliation came when the armies of Assyria laid siege to it with great ferocity. The head of that army was Ashurbanipal, the last great king of Assyria. His death caused the Pharaoh Taharka we spoke about earlier, whom Sennacherib spokesman had called out 32 years earlier. In Isaiah it's mentioned a splinter reed of a staff, that if a man were to put his weight on it, it would pierce through his hand. Caused that man to launch an offensive against the Assyrians. Ashurbanipal sent his rapid response units against him, reclaimed the lost territory by the use of force. So let me paint that for you. Ashurbanipal is there with his father Esarhaddon. Esarhaddon dies on his way to this city. On his way there, it puts Ashurbanipal as the man of the hour who has to step up and lead in his father's absence. And because of this, Taharka decides, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to launch this counteroffensive before they get here while leadership is weak. Ashurbanipal initially falls back. His rapid response units push their way back over the lost territory. And the ancient Egyptians continued. They were patient and persistent, and they continued to try to regain this territory. Ashurbanipal continued for years to squash the rebellions of this city. And because this city was so rebellious, he continued to not just destroy the citizens and the history and the walls and the buildings, but anyone who sent help to them, he continued to destroy. It is largely because of the resistant actions of this city that some would say that Ashurbanipal and the Assyrians took over all of Egypt. So consider this the gateway. Consider this city a representative of the opposition in Egypt that had been faced by Assyria. God is asking, are you better than the Egyptian kingdom, whom you overcame? We know a lot about the Egyptian kingdom. They were powerful, certainly dominated the Israelites for a time. But their judgment came. Despite its long history and its defenses, the Egyptians, their ancient city, they were no match for the might of the Syrian army. Look in verse 10. She was carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children were dashed in pieces at the top of all the streets. They cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. The city ultimately could not continue to wage war with Assyria. They were looted, a lot of its people deported to Assyria. But that second line in verse 10 is kind of sickening, is it not? Her young children were dashed in pieces. Margaret Murray tells how Ashurbanipal struck fear into the Egyptian population. She quotes him. So this is another Ashurbanipal quote. My army took the whole of Thebes, silver, gold, precious stones, the furniture of the palace, costly and beautiful garments, great horses, men and women, 2 lofty obelisks covered with beautiful carving, which were set up before the gate of the great temple. I wrenched and brought to Assyria. She then adds the comment, this was the terrible sack of Thebes, which sent a shudder of horror through all the countries within Assyria. Not known for leniency, the Assyrians had caught the citizens of Thebes, or taught them, a brutal lesson. Caused many tears to be shed and anguish and pain. The weak, the innocent, are often those who suffer the most in times of trouble. The idea of taking young children, crushing them, murdering them defenselessly. The just God did take action against it. Verse 11, thou also shalt be drunken, thou shalt be hid, thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. Just as others had not known what to do when the Assyrians turned up on their doorsteps, so now the table was going to be turned. Drunk, disoriented, confused, and frightened, the Ninevites and Assyria would run in fear as they were pursued for their lives by their enemies. That's a guy. Yep. Sir Max Malawan, who you may not know very much about him, he was an archaeologist in Assyria, a self-deemed Assyriologist. I love when people put words together like that. I wish I could do that. Anyway, if you're thinking the woman looks familiar, that is Agatha Christie. He was her second husband. Some of you probably know her. She was a crime writer. One time he said that archaeology is really quite like whodunits. We use similar methods. He proved his point to her when demonstrating how the Assyrian Empire had fallen. He took her to a site of the ancient city Nimrud. And if you're wondering, wait, Nimrud, that sounds like the name of someone biblical. Yep. Agatha watched in fascination as he pieced together a tale of murder and plunder in that ancient city. He traced the unmistakable signs of a drunken mob rampaging through the streets. And she asked him, wait, how do you know that they were drunk? He answered, elementary, my dear Agatha. They did not burn the wine cellars. These facts of Assyrian history came about. They were uncontrollable drunken mobs trying to drink away their problems and their fears. When destruction came, they were not sober enough to stand. So these opposing forces that would come to destroy the Assyrian empires largely from within would run riot through once proud cities of that mighty empire. Verse 12, all thy strongholds shall be like fig trees with the first ripe figs. They be shaken, they shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. Nineveh had become so vulnerable that with relatively little cost or sacrifice, the enemy would take the city. Nothing would stop his progress, and to him, it would appear as easy as taking a ripe fruit from the tree, just there for the picking. The accounts that have survived show the truth of these words and their complete fulfillment. The leader who ultimately takes Nineveh is this guy. Again, it's a picture, it's not really him. This is a wall relief of Nabopolassar. You probably don't know much about Nabopolassar. He was a great conquering king, and after he led his initial conquest and passed away, he turned his kingdom over to his son Nebuchadnezzar, who we do know accounts from. Ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar is able to take Judah and deport Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, and Daniel over into Babylon, Nineveh. Description of the campaign of Nabopolassar is actually contained on the Babylonian Chronicle. So they documented their stuff. They didn't save it on a thumb drive. There's no Google Drive back then. Praise God, right, buddy? No Google Drive. It wasn't just written down on paper. They wrote it in stone. So the account of Nabopolassar's destruction of Nineveh, you can actually see it in the London Museum. For those of you planning on taking a trip, go to the British Museum in London, say, I want to see that. It reads, in the 10th year, Nabopolassar, in the month Iaru, which is our March, mobilized the Babylonian army and marched up the banks of the Euphrates. The people of the lands of Suhu and Hinanu did not attack him, but laid their tribute before him. Nabopolassar also wrote, I slaughtered the land of Assyria. I turned the hostile lands into heaps and ruins. The Syrian, who since distant days had ruled over all the peoples and with a heavy yoke had brought injury to the people of the lands, his yoke I threw off. In particular, at Nineveh, a mighty assault against the city and a great slaughter was made of the people and nobles. His march inward was not very much opposed. At this point, the Assyrians had weakened. They had already faced judgment. It wasn't a big military conquest by the point that they got to that point. It was a victory that was handed over to them almost inexplicably if you remove the supernatural. Verse 13 is kind of a slap. Interested to get some of you ex-military people to tell me your thoughts on this. Behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women. The gates of thy land shall be set wide open unto thy enemies. The fire shall devour thy bars. So, understand political correctness as you and I know it is not at play in what is being said here. If you want to take that translation and put it in modern day terms, look at your troops. They're a bunch of women, effeminate, weak. You could equate this in prior generations to saying, you are a bunch of Nancy boys. Hey, military guys, how would you feel if someone said that about you? That's exactly how this was going for Nineveh. This kind of trash could be talked. You all are a bunch of weak, effeminate women who can't fight. It helps to explain the strange phenomena of Nineveh's rapid defeat. Egypt besieged Ashdod for 29 years. In besieging Ashdod for 29 years, a very small city, nothing. You know how long it took ultimately for the siege here? Less than 3 months. They anticipated much longer. Verse 14, 15, draw thee waters for the siege, fortify thy strongholds, go into clay and tread the mortar, make strong the brick kiln. There shall the fire devour thee, the sword shall cut thee off. It shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm, make thyself many as the locust. Also in the British Museum, you can see some of the wall stone reliefs from Sennacherib's palace. His palace has a name. If you ever want to go check it out, did I get a pic? I don't know if I got a pic. I did. Obviously not a pic. It's an artist rendering. His palace was known as the Palace Without Rival. That's the way it translates. A lofty place, right? There are stone reliefs from this palace that are in museums that can be viewed, and if you go to see them, you will see the scorching effects of fire that engulfed the city at the end. The walls themselves became cracked and scarred because of how much heat was put upon them when the city fell. Relatively recent excavations have shown that the city's defenders had tried to narrow the width of the northern gate, Adad, and the southwestern gate, Halsey. They took it from 7 meters down to 2 meters in a desperate attempt to make them more defensible. In those areas where they tried to narrow it, there's been a discovery of massive amounts of skeletons still in their guard uniforms close to the gates. These skeletons have evidence of blows to the arms, thrust wounds to the chest, and arrows still embedded in the bones. They tried to cut it to this narrow opening, and it still fell. The city still burned with so intense heat that it cracked the walls of the palace without rival, made of the finest material of the time. See in verse 16 this continued mention of the cankerworm. Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and fleeth away. Thy crowned are as the locusts. Locusts have been used by God as judgment, another of these minor prophets, have they not? And I feel like they were used in Egypt too. I feel like they were even used in one point as a judgment against the people of Judah when Joel was preaching. Could be wrong. God has used these locusts. You think the cicadas are bad? On a related note, Sister Barbara, if you hear anything, I might have told the pastor over at Covenant Church that I took a whole garbage bag of cicadas and dumped them in their sanctuary. So if you hear any negative feedback, I might have said that to him. Told him to have fun tonight getting them all out. Anyway. Thy captains is the great grasshoppers, which camp in the hedges in the cold day, but when the sun ariseth, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. Locusts are feared in these agricultural or agrarian societies because of the damage that they can render to crops. The after effect of an invasion is typically one of total devastation and heartbreak. Again, it's not just that they destroy this year's crops, but they destroy the yield of seeds for next year's crops. A locust invasion would destroy the economy and put lives at risk for years. You could lose a decade's work in a matter of a few instants when the locust came through. With considerable bargaining power of their army behind, the greedy merchants, they spread far and wide, stripping resources from many and sowing salt in the fields, so that like a locust swarm, devastation followed in their wake. But they became slack. They thought all places were easy pickings. This undermined their strength and awareness of the world's situation. They did not prepare themselves for this uprising of the Babylonians. Verse 18, thy shepherds slumber. O king of Assyria, thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. Thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathereth them. It's an interesting thing. I've shared with you about the psychological elements that these Assyrian rulers used to invoke towards enemies as well as those under their command, from weird things like the guy that was in the dog kennel on the wall, or the slaughtering of the lions in the pens outside of the various gates. They did a lot of things to portray themselves as these great and powerful, invincible, almost godlike figures. One of the titles for Assyrian monarchs that they were most proud of is that the Assyrian monarch was referenced as the great shepherd of the people. They boasted of their power to protect their people. They could do it better than anyone else could. They were the one who could protect their sheep. But in reality, like many leaders and those under them sought to preserve their own skins before seeing to the people in their care. It's one of the ironies of history. One part of the ruins of Nineveh is called Tel Kuyunjik, which means the mound of many sheep. So many passed there. The great shepherd of the Assyrians could not protect his sheep. How the mighty have fallen. In the place of kings are shepherds, and the place of people are sheep. As an aside, there is a great shepherd referenced in Scripture, and he can protect his sheep. In fact, to that point, if you're unaware, you'd recognize his voice according to Scripture. Verse 19, there is no healing of thy bruise. Some of us that are getting up in years wonder why our bruises don't heal as swiftly. I can feel that one, right? Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the bruit of thee shall clap hands over thee, for upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually? The city was dying from an incurable wound. It was an occasion for joy, not sadness, to all of those who had been oppressed and put into their kingdom. There were people who would have gloated over the shocking events of her passing. I mean, think about it now. If the United States met its destruction tomorrow, how many nations across the world would be happy about us going under? And we were not nearly as cruel as the Assyrians, and we certainly didn't conquer them, deport them, and ingratiate them into our system. But we would probably do the same thing, right? If you heard tomorrow that something had happened and Iran had fallen, you might rejoice. Some might do the same with Palestine, China, whatever. So imagine that a people that had been dominating over this part of the world for centuries and had been such cruel taskmasters and feared that when their time to come to an end would come to pass, this was going to bring joy. The opportunities were going to change. God's people should be different and realize that this was a fulfillment of His word. Therefore, the song of praise should be raised for Him protecting our people. God, thank you for your deliverance, for looking out for us. Not a pride that they fell, but a rejoicing that we were protected. There is something that can preach in that concept for those of us who are in the church. There are always going to be people who serve with us, work with us, who fall. They're going to have bad things happen in their life. Whether it's they suffer a great personal loss, or maybe it's a career change or loss of financial status or health status. It could even be that they get tripped up on sin and they fall. And it's like, ha, I knew that person wasn't as spiritual or holy as I am. That is not the attitude that God's people should ever take. If you're cheering against your brothers and sisters in Christ, you will have to give account to Almighty God for your attitude towards His children. You don't like me? Great. There's a line. Y'all can come together and form your own Bible class. Might not be a bad idea for a Sunday school class for anyone wanting to start it. They who don't like Brooks. Rob, do not say that's what you're changing your name to. Wouldn't appreciate it. They who don't like, hey, it's fine. But if you are cheering against my work for the kingdom of God, there's something wrong with you. I want you to succeed in reaching the lost. If you win more people to Christ than me, great. Let's go do great things together. I do not wish to see any of you suffer loss or failure to make me feel better about myself. How sinful and prideful of an attitude is it when you want to see others fall? Reputations tarnished so you can feel that you are more righteous or holy. It's a problem within the heart of man. When someone falls, we should seek restoration for the glory of God, and we should take the time to thank God and praise God that it wasn't us. It's by His grace. In Nineveh's destruction, no one's going to mourn her passing. The fate of Nineveh had hung over the city for centuries, was long delayed, but over its ruins might well be written the words, "The mill of God grinds slowly, but they grind, exceedingly small." When God finally settles accounts, He settles them in full. No one sat on the ruins of Nineveh writing a lament. If you read the book of Lamentations in there, when Jerusalem fell, there was lamentation. There was weeping and mourning and sadness over destruction. With Nineveh, no one was sad. No one is mourning its destruction. In time, its very existence was lost. Again, there were people who a few generations ago did not believe in the existence of the city. We continue to find through archaeological research, if we just dig another layer deeper, we continue to find so much of the Old Testament, the Word of God was true. Just because we haven't found it yet doesn't make it not true. Many other smaller cities held up longer than Assyria did. Samaria, which was the capital of Israel, that fell to Assyria. You know how long it took their siege? 3 years. It took the Assyrians 3 years to destroy Samaria. It took Babylon, who was uprising from within the Assyrian kingdom, under 3 months. When God finally settles accounts, He settles them in full. All people on earth would do well to learn this solemn but real truth. Today is the day of salvation. Tomorrow may be the day of judgment. It's amazing. 2 of the minor prophets, Jonah and Nahum, are devoted to Nineveh. That tells you about its importance in the ancient world. There was a prominence that the biblical writers gave to it and its destiny. Jonah's prophecy on Nineveh ended very differently. Jonah's last word of prophecy is God saying, "Should I not be concerned about the great city?" The city is the same, but this time it's a very different result. God's patience has run out. Nineveh must be destroyed. God's incomprehensible and almost seemingly inexhaustible mercy had been revealed through Jonah, and His unimaginable wrath is revealed through Nahum. God's undeserved mercy may have been in saving His people. His awesome vengeance was in punishing His enemies. We're given a foreshadowing here of what things will be like in the day of Christ's second coming. When He appears, may we, by His grace and mercy, find ourselves warmed by His love, and not the recipients of the fire of His wrath. J. Sidlow Baxter gave a warning to his readers. It's appropriate for us here. Quote, "Let the people of today take a long, steady, thoughtful look at old-time Nineveh. She is one of God's special object lessons to all rulers and all peoples. It's the same God who super-rules the world today. He is not less severe than He was in the Old Testament times, and He is not more compassionate. He is just as uncompromising towards sin, just as compassionate toward the penitent, the same from age to age. The idea that the gospel of Christ somehow tones down the severity in His divine character is wrong. Certainly, the gospel is the supreme expression of His divine graciousness, but it does not in the slightest degree modify the inflexible principles of righteousness by which God governs nations. God has always been gracious. God has always been intolerant of wickedness. He is the same today." I'll let you chew on that as where we put the pin in the minor prophet of Nahum's work. And we'll be dismissed in a word of prayer. How's that? Unless you all just want to sit here silently and stare at one another for 5 to 7 minutes. No? All right. Let's stand and be dismissed in a word of prayer then. Brother Tommy, you were the first one up. Would you mind leading us, Lord, in a word of prayer? Close us out.